organizations, they definitely contribute. And the workers advocate trade union, we are definitely there too.
Thank you for your answers. I will now move to Mr. Edwin. As you know, EU has strict environmental and labor standards for imports. And considering these situations of energy transitions, it definitely complements the environmental aspects and climate aspects. But as Mrs. Kalpana shared the worker rights perspective, so definitely for the case of Bangladesh, because we are now not ready enough to transit to the renewables, so there might create some stress on the worker rights. So considering this situation, how can EU assist Bangladesh in aligning in sustainability efforts with these standards while ensuring that the worker rights are not compromised?
Okay. Thank you so much, and thank you for having me in this panel. I will tell a little bit about what we as EU are doing to support the workers, but also to help the factories to meet environmental standards. I'll also tell a little bit more about the due diligence directive, which I think is strongly linked to this discussion, and we just had a presentation from a colleague from Brussels on that. But I would like to start by saying that our belief is that it is in the interest of the sector and thus of the workers to become more environmentally friendly and to respect labor rights better. The buyers are comparing Bangladesh with other countries, and it will harm your industry and you will lose jobs if you don't manage to meet environmental standards and meet labor rights. So it's not the West telling you what to do. I think, as also has been said in earlier sessions, to be competitive, to use the business opportunities, it's important to deliver on those standards. So then, how do we help how do we support as European Union? First of all, we have a policy dialogue with your government, where we advocate the importance of environmental standards, but also labor rights, the importance of consulting the trade unions, importance of education and skill development. We also have a very important Team Europe initiative on decent work, focusing on skills development and upskilling of the workforce, again ensuring labor rights at the workplace. All our projects always have an important gender and gender element. So that's one thing. We consider it as part of our cooperation to really focus on decent work. And we have a Team Europe initiative on which we work together with the EU member states, and we work also together with ILO to really improve the standards in the factories. On the environmental standards, we have two important contributions that I would like to mention. We have the Team Europe initiative on the green energy transition, which altogether aims at investing 1.3 billion euros in the green energy transition in Bangladesh, focusing on energy efficiency, renewable energy, and the required grids. In this context, I want to refer to our global gateway strategy, because our investments in the renewable energy sector in Bangladesh through our so-called Bangladesh Renewable Energy Facility, it's an important flagship under our Global Gateway Initiative. And this Global Gateway Initiative tries to invest in the sectors that we consider relevant for global development, but we try to do that in a responsible way. So the governance needs to be correct. There should be accountability, transparency, corruption should be avoided. But also, for all these investments, we need environmental and social impact assessments. So we need to assess how these investments impact the people of Bangladesh. So that's something I wanted to mention. And the third thing, we have one project that specifically focuses on the RMG sector. It's called it's the SRIA program, safety retrofits and environmental upgrades. So that focuses on creating a safer working environment, and it focuses on greening the factories by investing in, for example, effluent treatment plants, energy efficiency, and renewable energy. The last point I want to make is related to the due diligence directive. Part of the philosophy behind the due diligence directive is to improve the environmental standards and the conditions on the work floor in developing countries. So we are now saying that our buyers, they should not only take care of what they're doing in Europe, they should also look at the supply chain and should assess whether the workers in, for example, Bangladesh, are working under proper working conditions. And that is a risk because it makes it difficult for developing countries to apply with the due diligence directive. But the principle is it should support the working conditions in developing countries. And there we also, the European Commission or the European Union, but also the member states, and as we learned from the earlier presentation, also the buyers, the companies, they need to assist with meeting the environmental standards and with meeting the social standards. So actually, instead of saying you are asking this from us and this is harmful for us, we believe we are asking this from our buyers, and therefore we, the member states, and the buyers need to invest in the working conditions in Bangladesh. Sorry, very long answer.
No, it's okay. But I have another question for you. Like you brought accountability aspects. So if you consider it with climate justice aspects, like Bangladesh not being accountable for global warming, and 92% of the additional emission that happening in the atmosphere is done by the global north or the developed countries. So with the plans, like as we are now struggling to transform to renewables and we don't have enough capacity to go for the renewables solution, so how do you see the opportunity of climate finance to tackle this kind of challenge, the climate finance to go for renewables for the countries like Bangladesh?
So first of all, we want to invest in climate and energy in Bangladesh, together with the European Investment Bank, together with the financial institutions from the EU member states, and actually also with other co-financers. Indeed, the West has a historic responsibility, but we know that if the other larger emitters don't contribute, then we will not be able to address the problem. And that's actually another very important element. If we don't manage globally to meet environmental standards, then the impacts for the poorer and more vulnerable communities will be the largest. So we think that it's also in our interest to work together with Bangladesh on your green energy transition, and we think that we should invest in making your country more resilient with adaptation, but it's impossible to find the funding to make countries adapt to climate change and to finance loss and damage if we don't manage to globally reduce emissions. So that's the other part of our work together with you and your government in Bangladesh.
Thank you for your answer. So I will now move to Mr. Atuno Rotini. The ILO has been deeply involved in advocating for fair labor practices globally. So how does climate change intersect with labor rights in Bangladesh RMG sector? And what steps are necessary to ensure that the worker rights are practiced and without compromising the spirit of energy transition?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And, I think it's been quite a refreshing discussion already. And I particularly liked the Launch Foundation's video that set the scene for sort of what is the just transition generally. And I think many of the issues that I went to say have already been sort of said a bit. But I will iterate a bit a couple of things. One of them is that I think one can look at this issue from a perspective of the challenge, and then also from the perspective of the opportunity. And I think many of the discussions that have happened here today point to the fact that there's quite a lot of knowledge, quite a lot of interest, and quite a lot of investment. But the real question is how to put that together around a partnership so that it's not that these people expect or we need to do, but it's what do we actually do together to address the impacts of the climate change, and how do we actually get to that just and fair transition so that it comes up with a good outcome for the workers, good outcome for the businesses, and good outcome for the country as a whole. I think in the earlier panels, the negatives were already a little bit discussed. The fact that if the climate change is not addressed, there will be a huge amount of people migrating to urban spaces, climate vulnerable areas, and that will put a lot of pressure on Dhaka, on Chattogram, and other places, and that will put a lot of pressure on the creation of jobs. Not just preserving jobs, but creation of jobs, because you suddenly have a massive amount of people who want to work and need to work. And in that challenge, it's often the women and the youth who are sort of neglected. So there has to be some plan to address that issue. The negatives also include the ambient changes, the heat stress, and the occupational safety and health issues, the absenteeism that has resulted, and also the loss of productivity. I mean, Bangladesh is not a very high-ranking country in productivity to start with. If you lose a lot of productivity in terms of climate change-related issues, then the country is in a bit of a trouble, right? But then you can look at the positives. The positives is that new jobs will be created, new technologies will be introduced. There are opportunities to reskill, upskill, repurpose. So I think that's also something that needs to be coherently looked. And you've been talking to issues like circularity and waste management. All of these things are relatively new. And there's a lot of economic value, a lot of business purposing that can be done in relation to that. And the last thing, I think, which many have mentioned, and the Foundation video also mentioned, you cannot establish policies or programs or initiatives without listening to those who are affected. So the workers are affected, the people, the communities are affected, the businesses are affected, and the society as a large is affected. So just transition strategies do need to be discussed together and jointly, and they do need to have not just a vision and a strategy, but also priorities on how to operationalize, because whilst the references to the COVID, for instance, that was something that happened quickly, and we were not ready, and that resulted in a lot of closures of businesses and a lot of problems. But just transition happens slowly. Maybe not as slow as we would like it to, but it happens relatively slowly. So we do have time, and the time is now, to come together and to have a just transition strategy for the industry, for other sectors, and for the country as a whole. And organizations like ILO and the UN system are, of course, happy to continue to help and work on that from perspective of our mandates.
Thank you, Mr. Tumu, and especially thanks for bringing up the recognition-based justice pillar of just energy transition. So I have a quick question. One question like, say, there are lots of stakeholders as we transit to the renewables, and definitely brands are one of them. So being director of ILO, so how do you see how to make the brands accountable for compensation as you transit to the renewable energy?
Yeah, accountable or a partner in. And I think we are all talking to the fact that Bangladesh has changed a lot in terms of the relationship between industries here and brands and buyers as partners. So I think the answer is somewhere there. In order to do modern business, in order to do compliant business, and some people talked about to shift the narrative from compliance to strategies of business, you need partnerships. So suppliers need buyers, buyers need suppliers, and Bangladesh should somehow profit in a meaningful manner from those partnerships. So I think that's where the answer lies. Continue to maintain, deepen partnerships, but also have lucid information, data, and sort of prioritization of what you want to achieve together.
Thank you for your answer. So I will now move to Mrs. Tanzila Tazrin, and the specific questions on how can the Netherlands and Bangladesh collaborate on climate justice initiatives, particularly in industries like RMG sectors, that are both environmentally impactful and socially important for millions of workers.
Hello, it's working. Thank you very much, Amravai, and thanks to all the panelists. Thanks to BAE for inviting the Dutch government to this very important topic of climate action. Maybe I'll go back a little bit and picking up the points from Edwin and from Tomo as well. I think a lot has been done in terms of climate change, in terms of discussions and dialogue. So for the Netherlands government, climate change has remained a priority, and that commitment is reflected both in domestic policies of Netherlands as well as the international policies. And that's why most of you would remember the Accord, and the Dutch government is still building on the legacy of the Accord. And in there, where we prioritize a lot is also looking at the most vulnerable people in this supply chain, which is the workers. And in that regards, one of the things that the Netherlands government is working on, together with ILO Germany, is providing a social protection scheme, particularly for workers. It's the employment injury scheme. So what that does is basically covers any workplace-related injuries, and it is actually a very good example of how partnerships can work together, and that's partnership between government, partnership with employers, and partnership with workers, as well as brands. So I think just transition means more than just a retraining or skills program. I think what it requires is a comprehensive framework that is based on meaningful and inclusive social dialogue. What that means, you have to have a dialogue with the workers, brands, and everyone in the supply chain. So, from the Dutch government point of view, I think we've been advancing on the decent work agenda for a long time, but at this moment, I think dialogue would be a very essential key for the just transition.
Okay, thank you for your answer. And there is a strong correlation with the dirty energy consumption and development. And definitely, development has different aspects, like developing in technology. Netherlands and other European countries, and considering the global norm, they are superior in technology. And to transit to the renewables, it requires technological solutions. And considering countries like Bangladesh, we don't have that much of technology. So bringing up the climate justice once again. So how do you see the technology transfer and the patent-free technology transfer with the countries like Bangladesh, so that the country can thrive better in regards to transit to the renewables?
I think in terms of technology transfer and also knowledge transfer, there is already a lot of transfers happening across the borders. There's no, I don't want to go into depth of it. Particularly for the Dutch government, there's also a lot of companies who are already working here in the textile sector and beyond, in maritime as well as other sectors. Even in financing, Dutch government has a Dutch Climate Fund as well that is being, and Just Transition Funds that is also used for development cooperation purpose to support the local unions, which is why we also have union-to-union supports, and they're quite strong in Bangladesh as well. So that is one of the things that Dutch government takes into account, but also we have a strategy that we have recently launched as well, and that looks at the circular economy, the circular production process at the same time. And in there, we will also be exploring this technology transfer in a much greater scale and hopefully in a successful case. So in coming years, that's also one of the things that we will be focusing on.
Thank you, Akam. Thanks for the panelists for sharing your insights. So I will move to the audience. So if you have any questions to our panelists, I'll just take one or two questions from the audience. If you have any. So I think you have covered it well. So no questions there. Thank you again. So if I am to wrap up the discussions, let's say there are 4 pillars to ensure